Have you ever wondered why, no matter how hard you try, certain patterns in your life keep repeating? It's not luck, fate, or coincidence. It's the silent influence of hidden paradigms shaping your thoughts, choices, and destiny. Today, we're not just talking about changing your mind, we're talking about reclaiming it, taking it back from the invisible forces that have been steering it without your permission. The invisible chains. There are prisons without bars, cells without locks, and captors who never raise their voice. They live inside the mind, quietly weaving threads that bind the soul. These are the invisible chains, beliefs and assumptions so deeply embedded that you no longer question their origin. You wake up each morning, speak words, think thoughts, make choices, and all the while, the chains remain, subtle, silent, and seemingly harmless. Yet they dictate how far you can go, how much you can receive, and how brightly you can shine. Invisible chains often form early in life, when the mind is open and unguarded. A careless remark from a teacher, a repeated warning from a parent, the whispered opinions of neighbors, each leaves a small mark. These marks harden into ideas, and the ideas become unchallenged truths. You begin to live as though they are laws written into the very structure of reality. Money is hard to earn. You're not smart enough. Opportunities are for other people. You don't recall when you agreed to these contracts, yet they govern your every step. The danger of invisible chains is not just in their presence, but in their disguise. They do not appear as limitations. They masquerade as common sense. You may call them being realistic or knowing your place. They often echo the voices of authority figures you once trusted, and because those voices were familiar, you accepted them without proof. Over time, you stopped noticing the boundary lines they drew around your dreams. You built your life inside those lines, never realizing the map was not drawn by your own hand. Some chains are woven from fear of loss, failure, rejection. Others are spun from false loyalty to family patterns, cultural traditions, or group thinking. You may carry beliefs simply because they allow you to remain accepted within your circle. The mind tells you, if I step beyond this line, I may lose the love and approval I depend on. And so the chain tightens, not with force, but with the soft pressure of belonging. Breaking free begins with seeing. You cannot shatter what you refuse to acknowledge. This seeing is not an act of judgment, but of awareness. It is the moment you pause and ask, is this thought truly mine? Did I choose it, or did I inherit it? When the mind grows still enough, the patterns reveal themselves. You begin to notice how certain ideas rise unbidden, how certain fears arrive on schedule, how certain doubts whisper the same words each time you take a step toward change. The invisible chains thrive in unexamined repetition. They are strengthened by every unchallenged agreement you make with them. But when you speak the truth of your divine freedom, when you affirm that your life is not bound by the past, the chain begins to weaken. Awareness is the light that exposes the shadows, and once you see the chain for what it is, it loses its disguise. Freedom is not found by resisting the chain, but by stepping into a higher reality where it no longer exists. You begin to speak a new language, one of possibility and expansion. You stop repeating the old mantras of limitation and replace them with words that align with your highest vision. The moment you refuse to carry a belief that does not serve you, you have already loosened one link. The invisible chains cannot survive in a mind that knows its own power. They cannot thrive in the presence of a soul that remembers it was born to be free. When you reclaim your right to choose each thought, when you guard the gates of your mind with unwavering attention, you find that the chains dissolve not with effort, but with the simple refusal to give them reality. The power of awareness. Awareness is the lamp that reveals the hidden corners of the mind. It is not mere observation. It is the sacred act of waking up to what has always been there. Many live their entire lives surrounded by treasures they never notice, or chained by illusions they never question, simply because they have never turned on this inner light. Awareness is that turning. It is the moment you stop drifting and begin steering. It is the quiet but profound realization that you are not your thoughts. You are the one who sees them. The power of awareness lies in its ability to transform without force. When you bring light into a darkened room, you do not have to wrestle the shadows out, they simply vanish. In the same way, when awareness shines upon a limiting belief, the belief begins to lose its grip. This is not about fighting the mind, but about understanding it. It is seeing the machinery behind your reactions, the invisible scripts you have been following, and the subtle patterns that dictate your choices. Awareness begins with noticing. You may suddenly realize how certain words leave your lips without conscious choice, or how the same doubts visit you whenever you reach for something greater. You may catch yourself agreeing to ideas that keep you small, simply because they feel familiar. This noticing is not condemnation, it is recognition. Without awareness, the mind runs on autopilot, repeating the same programs year after year. With awareness, you place your hands on the wheel. True awareness is not limited to the intellect, it is a full, living presence. It is feeling the rush of emotion when a fear thought arises and yet staying still enough to watch it. It is hearing the voice of self-criticism and realizing that it is only an echo from the past. It is sensing the moment when you are about to shrink back into an old identity and in that split second, choosing otherwise. The awareness itself gives you the space to choose. This power is gentle but unstoppable. It does not demand that you remove every false belief at once. It simply keeps the light on so that no thought can remain hidden for long. Over time, the mind becomes transparent, and you see through the illusions that once ruled you. You begin to recognize that the so-called obstacles in your life are often the reflections of unexamined assumptions within you. Awareness shows you where the root lies so that you no longer waste energy trimming branches. The more you practice awareness, the more you realize that it is not about controlling life, but about aligning with it. Awareness allows you to witness the moment before you speak, before you react, before you decide. In that stillness, you can ask, does this thought serve my highest vision? If the answer is no, you are free to choose another. This is the quiet revolution that awareness brings, the ability to respond instead of react, to create instead of repeat. Even the smallest act of awareness can open a doorway. You may notice that a thought of lack rises every time you see someone else succeed, and instead of letting it run unchecked, you choose to bless their success as a sign of possibility for yourself. That single choice shifts the entire energy of your mind. It plants a seed of abundance where scarcity once lived. The power of awareness is not in doing more, but in seeing more. It is the remembrance that you are not a victim of your conditioning, but the conscious witness who can dissolve it. It is the awakening to the fact that every moment offers you a fresh canvas, and with awareness as your brush, you can paint a reality that reflects the truth of who you are. Inherited thought patterns. From the moment you take your first breath, the world begins to speak to you, not just through words, but through the energy, attitudes, and unspoken beliefs of those around you. Long before you can choose your own ideas, you are absorbing the patterns of thought held by your family, your culture, and the collective mind. These patterns slip into the subconscious quietly, often unnoticed, shaping how you see yourself, what you believe is possible, and how you expect life to unfold. They become the blueprint upon which you build your reality. Inherited thought patterns are like invisible family heirlooms. They are passed down without ceremony, carried in casual conversations, repeated warnings, and daily habits. A parent may never say, "You must think this way," yet their own fears and assumptions seep into your awareness. You hear them speak about money as something scarce and difficult, and without realizing it, you adopt the same relationship with abundance. You watch them approach challenges with resignation instead of faith, and the same posture settles into your own mind. These patterns are not always born from malice. Often they come from love and a desire to protect. A relative may tell you not to dream too big so that you avoid disappointment. They may teach you to expect hardship so that you are prepared. Yet what begins as protection can become a cage because the mind takes these warnings as universal truths. The patterns remain unquestioned, quietly scripting the limits of your life. The most persistent inherited thoughts are the ones that feel the most natural. They blend so seamlessly with your identity that you mistake them for your own voice. You might think you are cautious by nature, when in reality you are carrying generations of fear disguised as wisdom. You might believe you are just not lucky, when you are simply repeating the same expectation of struggle that has echoed through your family line. To recognize these inherited patterns, you must become an observer of your own thinking. Notice the statements you make without hesitation about money, relationships, health, or success. Ask yourself where you first heard them. Often, you will find that they are not born from your own experiences, but from the experiences of those who came before you. This recognition is not about blame. It is about reclaiming the authorship of your mind. Once seen, an inherited thought can be examined against the truth of who you are now. You are not bound to live out the same story simply because it was handed to you. You have the power to keep what uplifts you and release what holds you down. This is the sacred right of mental choice, to consciously accept or reject any belief, no matter how long it has lived in your family's vocabulary. Breaking free from these patterns is not about rejecting your heritage, it is about honoring it in a higher way. You can choose to carry forward the strength, love, and resilience of those who came before you, while leaving behind the fears, doubts, and limitations they may have carried. You can decide that the legacy you pass on will be one of faith, possibility, and abundance. Every time you replace an inherited limitation with a higher truth, you shift more than just your own life. You alter the current of thought that flows through your family line. You become a new reference point, showing that the old story is not the only story. This is how the cycle changes. One awakened mind choosing differently, planting new seeds where old ones once grew, and tending to them until they become the new inheritance for generations to come. Your mind is sacred soil. The mind is like soil, rich, fertile, and always ready to bring forth whatever is planted within it. Every thought, every belief, every mental image is a seed. The soil does not argue with the seed you choose. It simply receives it, nurtures it, and produces according to its nature. If you plant seeds of doubt, you will see uncertainty grow. If you plant seeds of faith, abundance, and possibility, you will watch those qualities blossom. The sacredness of the mind lies in its absolute receptivity. It mirrors back whatever you allow to be sown. This sacred soil is never empty for long. From childhood, seeds are scattered into it by words you hear, stories you are told, and experiences you witness. Some of these seeds are planted intentionally, while others arrive without your awareness. The mind holds them all and brings them to life. Over time, the harvest of your thoughts becomes the reality you walk in. You may think life is happening to you, when in truth, much of it is growing from the inner garden you have been tending, consciously or not. Because the mind accepts any seed, it becomes your sacred duty to choose what you plant. Just as a gardener will not leave the soil open for weeds to take root, you cannot leave your mental ground unattended. Idle thoughts, repeated fears, and careless words act like wild weeds, crowding out the flowers and fruit you truly desire. Vigilance is not a burden, it is the loving care that honors the sacredness of your own consciousness. To plant well, you must first clear what no longer serves you. Old beliefs, rooted in fear or limitation, can be uprooted by replacing them with truths that align with your highest vision. This is not done through force, but through consistent, loving cultivation. Each time you affirm a higher thought, you place a new seed into the soil. Each time you act in faith instead of fear, you water that seed. Each time you hold an image of your desired outcome as already true, you give it sunlight. The sacred nature of the mind means that it will not betray the seed you plant. It will always bring forth a harvest in kind. If you persist in planting gratitude, you will reap joy. If you persist in planting resentment, you will reap conflict. The soil does not discriminate, but you can. You have the choice, every moment, to scatter seeds of beauty or seeds of despair, and the choice you make will be reflected back to you, multiplied. Sacred soil requires sacred attention. It asks you to listen to the quality of your inner dialogue, to notice the tone of the mental pictures you dwell upon. Are they images of failure or visions of victory? Are they filled with worry or anchored in peace? Every repeated thought presses deeper into the soil, rooting itself until it becomes part of your inner landscape. The harvest is inevitable. What changes is your willingness to plant with intention. When you begin to treat your mind as holy ground, you stop allowing any careless word to fall upon it. You choose your influences with care, knowing that every story you hear, every opinion you entertain, every image you dwell upon leaves a seed behind. You begin to speak to yourself as a wise gardener would, encouraging growth, protecting fragile beginnings, and pulling up weeds before they can take hold. The beauty of sacred soil is that it is endlessly renewing. No matter what has been planted in the past, you can begin today to sow a new crop. The seasons of the mind are generous. They respond quickly to faith-filled tending. In honoring your mind as sacred soil, you step into the role of conscious creator, shaping the landscape of your life with every seed you choose to plant. Identifying limiting codes. Within the mind, there are patterns that act like hidden codes, quiet, automatic programs that determine how you think, feel, and respond to life. These codes are not written in ink, but in the repeated thoughts, beliefs, and emotional reactions you carry. They operate silently in the background, guiding your choices without asking for your permission. A limiting code is one that keeps you in a smaller version of yourself, repeating cycles of fear, doubt, or lack, even when your conscious mind wants something greater. Limiting codes are often disguised as just the way things are. They might take the form of statements you hear yourself repeating: "I'm not good with money, people can't be trusted, it's too late for me to change." They can hide in the way you react to opportunity, hesitating when you should move forward, settling when you should expand. Because they are so deeply woven into your thinking, you may not recognize them as codes at all. You may believe they are facts. To identify these hidden scripts, you must slow down enough to observe your own mental responses. Notice what rises in you when you think about pursuing a dream, starting a new relationship, or stepping into a greater role. Do you feel excitement quickly followed by a rush of fear? Do you hear a voice inside telling you that you are not ready, not worthy, or not capable? These reactions are not random. They are the output of the limiting code that has been programmed over time. Often, these codes come from the influence of others. They may have been inherited from family, absorbed from culture, or picked up from authority figures you once trusted. The mind accepted them because they seemed logical or because they were repeated often enough to feel true. The more often the code was run through thoughts, words, or experiences, the deeper it became embedded. Like computer software, it runs automatically until it is consciously rewritten. Identifying limiting codes also requires listening to your language. The words you speak reveal the programs you are running. Phrases such as, "That's just my luck," or "Things never work out for me," may seem harmless, but they are verbal confirmations of the code. The mind takes them as instructions, reinforcing the pattern. By becoming aware of the words you choose, you can begin to see the blueprint of your inner programming. Another way to uncover these codes is to look at the repeating patterns in your life. What challenges seem to show up again and again, no matter what you do? Do you find yourself in similar financial struggles, relationship dynamics, or career obstacles? These recurring themes are not coincidences. They are the visible results of the invisible programming you carry. The outer repetition points to an inner script that needs to be rewritten. When you spot a limiting code, there is no need for self-judgment. The purpose of identification is not to condemn yourself, but to reclaim your authority over your own mind. The very act of seeing the code begins to weaken its control. Awareness creates space, and in that space, you can choose a new instruction. Just as a computer can be updated with new software, the mind can be given new, empowering commands that align with your highest vision. The process begins with honesty, admitting where you have been running on automatic and where you have been unconsciously agreeing with limitation. From there, you can introduce thoughts, affirmations, and actions that contradict the old code. With repetition, the new program becomes dominant, and the old one fades into the background until it no longer runs at all. By identifying limiting codes, you step out of the role of a passive passenger in your own mind and into the role of the conscious architect of your reality. The law of substitution. The mind cannot hold two opposing thoughts at the same time. When one thought occupies the mental space, the other must step aside. This is the essence of the law of substitution, the ability to replace an unwanted thought with one that serves your highest good. You do not have to wrestle with fear to remove it. You simply introduce a thought of faith in its place. You do not have to fight against doubt. You plant a seed of certainty, and the doubt begins to dissolve. The law works gently but unfailingly, for the mind will always yield to the idea you give it most attention. Most people attempt to free themselves from negative thinking by resisting it. They tell themselves not to worry, not to be afraid, not to feel inadequate. Yet the act of focusing on what you want to avoid keeps it alive in the mind. The law of substitution offers a higher approach. Rather than trying to erase the dark, you bring in the light. Rather than pulling at the weeds endlessly, you plant flowers until the weeds no longer have space to grow. Every time a limiting thought arises, you are given a choice. You can allow it to settle, taking root and producing after its kind, or you can replace it instantly with a thought that supports your vision. This is not denial. It is deliberate creation. Denial attempts to pretend the negative thought does not exist, but substitution acknowledges it and then offers something better for the mind to hold. Over time, the new thought becomes the default, and the old one fades like a shadow in the sun. The law of substitution requires awareness, for you cannot replace a thought you do not notice. This is why cultivating inner observation is so important. You must hear the words you speak in silence and feel the emotions that rise with them. The moment you catch yourself in the old pattern, you have the power to choose again. It may be as simple as shifting from "I can't" to "I am able," from "it's too late" to "my timing is perfect," from "I'm afraid" to "I am safe and guided." Substitution is not only about words, but also about mental images. The mind responds strongly to pictures. If you find yourself imagining failure, you can deliberately create a new picture of success, detail it until you can see it clearly, and hold it until the feeling changes. The mind will begin to accept this new image as reality, and your actions will start to align with it. At first, substitution may feel like effort, especially if the old thought has been deeply ingrained. The mind may return to the negative idea out of habit, but each time you replace it, you weaken its hold. Just as a path through a field becomes less visible if it is no longer walked on, the neural pathway for the old thought begins to fade when it is not given use. The more consistently you practice substitution, the easier it becomes, until it happens naturally without conscious effort. The beauty of the law of substitution is that it works in any area of life. Whether you are facing fear, discouragement, resentment, or self-doubt, you can always choose a thought that lifts you higher. In doing so, you take command of your mental atmosphere and shape it to match the life you desire. The old patterns no longer dictate your future because you have learned to replace them with truths that align with your worth, your purpose, and your vision. Inner dialogue as destiny. Every word you speak to yourself, whether aloud or in the silence of your mind, is a seed cast into the fertile soil of your consciousness. This inner dialogue runs continuously, narrating your life, interpreting events, and shaping your self-image. It is not merely background noise, it is the architect of your destiny. The way you speak to yourself determines the limits you set, the doors you open, and the reality you experience. The inner dialogue is often so habitual that it goes unnoticed. From the moment you wake until you fall asleep, you are telling yourself stories about who you are, what you can do, and what you expect from life. If those stories are rooted in fear, doubt, or unworthiness, they will quietly design a life that matches them. If they are filled with faith, confidence, and vision, they will lead you toward the fulfillment of your deepest desires. This dialogue is shaped not only by conscious choice, but also by the imprints of the past. Words spoken by parents, teachers, and peers may echo for years, repeating themselves in your own voice. A single criticism from childhood can become an ongoing script that whispers, "You're not enough," every time you attempt something new. Unless this script is brought into awareness and rewritten, it will continue to steer your actions and expectations without resistance. Your inner dialogue acts as a constant affirmation, whether you intend it or not. When you say to yourself, "I always struggle," you affirm struggle. When you say, "Good things happen to me," you affirm blessing. The mind does not distinguish between what is true and what is imagined. It accepts the repeated thought as instruction and begins to align your perception and behavior to fulfill it. In this way, your inner dialogue becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Changing your destiny begins with changing this conversation. You cannot create a life of expansion while telling yourself a story of limitation. This requires a conscious decision to monitor your inner words and replace the ones that diminish you with those that lift you higher. The transformation is not in silencing the mind, but in teaching it a new language, one that matches the reality you wish to experience. When you speak to yourself in terms of possibility, you train your mind to look for openings instead of obstacles. When you affirm your worth, you naturally gravitate toward opportunities that reflect it. The dialogue you carry within becomes the lens through which you interpret the world, and what you see is shaped by what you say. Two people can face the same event, one calling it a disaster, the other calling it a lesson, and each will create a completely different future from that moment. It is also important to recognize the emotional tone of your inner dialogue. Words are carriers of vibration, and the feeling behind them is what impresses the subconscious most deeply. Saying, "I am successful," without the feeling of success is like planting a seed without water. To change your destiny, you must speak in a way that stirs the emotion of truth within you, even if it feels unfamiliar at first. Over time, as you consistently choose words that reflect your highest vision, your inner dialogue becomes an ally instead of an enemy. The old scripts lose their power because they are no longer being rehearsed. In their place, new patterns take root, patterns that affirm your value, strengthen your faith, and inspire your action. The more you repeat these higher truths, the more they solidify until they become your natural way of speaking to yourself. In this way, your inner dialogue ceases to be a silent saboteur and becomes the guiding voice that leads you into the life you are meant to live. Every word becomes a step, every phrase a path, and each conversation with yourself a quiet shaping of the reality you will one day walk into, unmasking fear disguised as wisdom. Fear rarely announces itself openly. More often, it dresses in convincing disguises, wearing the mask of caution, practicality, or so-called common sense. It presents itself as a voice of reason, urging you to be careful, to wait for the right moment, to lower your expectations so you will not be disappointed. On the surface, it sounds protective, even caring. But underneath, it is the same old force that has kept countless dreams locked away and countless lives lived smaller than they were meant to be. This fear disguised as wisdom often speaks in polished, believable tones. It says, be realistic when you aim for something beyond your current reach. It says, think of the risks when you take steps toward your purpose. It says, maybe later when an opportunity appears before you. Its skill lies in making hesitation seem intelligent and in convincing you that holding back is a virtue. Over time, if unrecognized, this voice can weave itself so deeply into your thinking that you stop distinguishing between fear and genuine discernment. One reason this disguise is so effective is that it often borrows authority from the past. Perhaps you have witnessed someone take a leap and fail, or perhaps you were taught that security is found only in the predictable and the familiar. The mind stores these experiences and wraps them in a layer of logic, offering them back to you as wisdom. You may even repeat the same phrases you once heard from others, passing them off as your own hard-earned perspective, when in truth, they are only inherited fears dressed in respectable clothing. To unmask this fear, you must be willing to question every piece of advice that tells you to shrink, pause indefinitely, or doubt your own abilities. Ask yourself, does this voice empower me or diminish me? Does it lead me toward my vision or keep me circling in the same place? Real wisdom will always expand you. It may guide you to prepare, to plan, or to proceed with thoughtfulness, but it will never suffocate your desire or make you feel smaller for having it. Fear disguised as wisdom thrives in the mind that equates safety with stagnation. It persuades you that staying exactly where you are is the most responsible choice. But the truth is that life itself is movement. Growth requires risk, and every new chapter demands that you step beyond the boundary of the familiar. What fear calls reckless, faith calls necessary. What fear calls impossible, vision calls the next step. When you begin to see the mask, its power weakens. You may notice that the advice to wait until things are perfect has kept you waiting for years. You may see that the suggestion to take the secure route has cost you opportunities that will not return. You may realize that the voice telling you to play it safe is not your protector, but the gatekeeper of your own limitations. The unmasking happens in the moment you choose to act despite the cautious whisper. It happens when you let your vision lead instead of your worry. It happens when you allow the possibility of success to carry more weight than the memory of failure. This is not about ignoring genuine signals of danger, but about distinguishing between what is truly protective and what is simply paralyzing. Fear will always try to disguise itself because it knows that if you saw it clearly, you would no longer obey it. Once you recognize its tone, you can meet it with the clarity of truth. You can thank it for its concern and then step forward anyway. With each step, the mask slips further away and you begin to see fear for what it has always been, an illusion that loses all strength the moment you choose to walk past it. The spiritual right to choose. Every soul is born with an untouchable gift, the right to choose the thoughts it will hold, the words it will speak, and the actions it will take. This right is not granted by society, tradition, or circumstance. It is woven into the very fabric of your being. No matter where you are or what has happened in your life, this spiritual authority remains yours. It is the power to determine the direction of your mind and, through it, the course of your destiny. The spiritual right to choose is the great equalizer among human beings. Two people can face the same event, yet one will find hope and possibility while the other sinks into despair. The difference lies not in the event itself, but in the choice of perspective. This inner liberty means that even when outer conditions seem beyond your control, you can still decide how you will think about them, how you will feel toward them, and what meaning you will assign to them. Many forget this right because they have surrendered it to habit, conditioning, or the influence of others. They may live according to the expectations of family, culture, or authority figures, allowing those voices to determine what is possible. In doing so, they act as if their choices are limited, when in truth, they have simply stopped exercising their authority. To reclaim it, you must first remember that your mind is your own sacred territory, and no one else can rule it unless you allow them to. Choosing is not always about dramatic changes. It often begins in the smallest moments. You can choose patience over irritation when faced with delay. You can choose gratitude over complaint when something does not go as planned. You can choose faith over worry when the path ahead is unclear. These seemingly small choices, repeated over time, create a current of energy that carries your life in a new direction. The spiritual right to choose also extends to the beliefs you will accept as true. You are not obligated to keep every thought that comes into your mind or every belief you were handed by others. You can examine each one and decide whether it aligns with the life you desire. If it does not, you have the power to release it and choose another. This is not rebellion against your past, it is alignment with your highest truth. Exercising this right requires awareness and courage. Awareness to notice when you are living on autopilot, and courage to step out of the patterns that no longer serve you. There may be resistance from within yourself or from those around you, because choosing differently can unsettle the familiar. But every time you choose in alignment with your inner guidance, you strengthen your authority over your own life. Your spiritual right to choose is not limited by external forces. Circumstances may present options that seem narrow, yet within them there is always a space where your decision matters. Even in challenge, you can choose your attitude, your focus, and your inner response. That choice influences the opportunities you will see and the energy you will attract. This right is both a privilege and a responsibility. Privilege because it means you are never truly powerless. Responsibility because your choices ripple outward, shaping not only your own experience but also the lives of those around you. When you choose love over resentment, peace over conflict, and vision over limitation, you become a living example of freedom in action. To honor this gift is to live consciously, refusing to hand over the reins of your mind to fear, doubt, or the will of others. It is to stand in the center of your own being and declare, with quiet authority, that you alone decide the thoughts you will plant, the beliefs you will water, and the dreams you will pursue, breaking the spell of the collective mind. There is a powerful force that shapes much of human thought and behavior, and it moves silently through the currents of society. It is the collective mind, the shared beliefs, fears, and assumptions of the many. It operates like a great tide, carrying individuals along without their awareness, persuading them to accept its conclusions as truth simply because they are widely held. To live without questioning it is to be under its spell, repeating its patterns, echoing its judgments, and surrendering the right to think independently. The collective mind is not inherently malicious. It is simply the accumulation of what most people believe to be true at any given time. Yet because it reflects the average consciousness rather than the highest truth, it often limits rather than expands. It may declare that success is only for a chosen few, that opportunities are scarce, that the future is uncertain and unsafe. These ideas are repeated through conversation, media, tradition, and education until they are accepted as unquestionable. When you are under the spell of the collective mind, you may mistake conformity for wisdom. You might follow trends not because they align with your values, but because they are popular. You might dismiss your own intuition because it conflicts with the opinion of the majority. You may even feel fear at the thought of standing apart, as though your safety depends on agreeing with the crowd. This is how the spell works, not through force, but through the subtle seduction of belonging. Breaking the spell begins with awareness. You must learn to recognize when a belief you hold is truly your own and when it is simply borrowed from the many. This requires pausing before you accept any statement as fact, asking yourself, do I know this to be true from my own experience, or have I accepted it because everyone else believes it? The moment you begin to question, the spell begins to loosen. The collective mind often resists those who step outside of it. When you choose a path that defies convention, you may encounter doubt or even criticism from others. Yet this is the very sign that you are no longer asleep to its influence. Freedom comes when you no longer measure your choices by the approval of the majority, but by the alignment of your soul. To break the spell, you must also guard your mental environment. What you read, watch, and listen to carries the vibration of the collective mind that produced it. If you continually expose yourself to messages of fear, limitation, or cynicism, you will find those seeds taking root in your own consciousness. By choosing sources of inspiration, truth, and higher vision, you nourish a mind that can stand independent of the crowd. This independence does not mean rejecting every shared idea. It means examining each one and accepting only what resonates with your highest truth. There are times when the collective mind aligns with wisdom, such as shared values of kindness, cooperation, or justice. But even then, the choice to live by these values must be your own, made consciously rather than unconsciously. When you step out from under the spell, you discover that the world is far more expansive than the collective mind portrays it to be. You see opportunities where others see obstacles. You hold faith when others hold fear. You walk paths that others may not understand, yet they lead you directly toward the life you are meant to live. The collective mind can shape the many, but it cannot bind the one who has awakened to their own power to choose. Reprogramming through affirmation. Your mind is a fertile field, and every thought you repeat is a seed planted in its soil. Over time, those seeds grow into the conditions and experiences of your life. If you have lived with thoughts of lack, fear, or limitation, it is not because you are doomed to them, it is because the seeds of such thoughts were sown, often unconsciously, and given time to grow. Affirmation is the sacred practice of planting new seeds on purpose, reshaping the inner landscape so that it yields a different harvest. An affirmation is more than a string of positive words. It is a declaration of truth that overrides the old patterns impressed upon the mind. Many carry programming from childhood, culture, or past experiences that whispers of scarcity, unworthiness, or failure. Such programming operates in the background, shaping decisions, expectations, and even how reality is perceived. Affirmation works as a reprogramming tool, deliberately replacing these limiting codes with thoughts that align with abundance, confidence, and possibility. The key to effective affirmation lies in repetition and emotional conviction. A thought repeated often enough, especially when spoken with feeling, begins to take root in the subconscious mind. The subconscious does not argue or question, it accepts what it hears consistently as truth. If for years you have affirmed lack through words like, I can't, I never, or I'm not able, then it is no mystery why life reflects those beliefs back to you. To reprogram, you must speak a new language to yourself, one that matches the life you wish to create. Affirmations must be spoken in the present tense as if they are already true. This is not pretending, it is claiming your truth in advance, before the outer evidence appears. When you affirm, I am worthy of success, or I walk in divine abundance, you are impressing the mind with a reality that exists in potential, calling it forth into form. If you speak them with hesitation or doubt, the seed may not take root deeply, but with faith and repetition, it grows stronger each day. It is natural at first to feel resistance when saying affirmations that contradict your current experience. The old programming will rise and argue, reminding you of past disappointments or present limitations. This is not a sign of failure, it is the sign that you are pushing against the old patterns. Continue to affirm until the voice of truth grows louder than the voice of doubt. Eventually, the old programming loses its power and fades into the background. Affirmation also works best when it engages the imagination. As you speak your chosen words, picture them as already real. See yourself walking in the conditions you are declaring. Feel the emotions you would have if it were true right now. This combination of word, image, and feeling is the trinity of reprogramming. The subconscious responds to vivid impressions, and when affirmations are charged with feeling, they are impressed far more deeply. There is a discipline in this practice, for the mind often wants to drift back to familiar thought patterns. This is why affirmation must be done daily, consistently, and with attention. You cannot plant a seed once and expect a garden. You must water it until it grows strong enough to thrive on its own. Likewise, you must watch your words throughout the day, for idle complaints or negative statements will replant the old weeds you are trying to remove. Through affirmation, you take back authorship of your mental script. You stop allowing the voice of the past or the influence of the collective to dictate your story. Each declaration becomes a stroke of the pen, rewriting the narrative of your life. You begin to live from the inside out, shaping circumstances with the power of the truth you choose to affirm. Acting in the new belief. When a new belief is born within you, it is like a delicate flame. At first, it may flicker in the winds of old doubts, yet if you protect it and feed it with action, it grows into a steady light. The shift from simply affirming a truth to living as though it is already real is where transformation truly takes root. Words shape the mind, but action seals the belief into your reality. To act in a new belief means to behave now as the person you declare yourself to be, without waiting for outer proof. If you affirm that you are abundant but continue to act as though resources are scarce, you send a mixed signal to the subconscious. The subconscious takes instruction not only from your words, but from your actions. When your actions and your affirmations agree, the new belief takes deeper root and the outer world begins to conform. Many hesitate to act in alignment with a new belief because they want certainty first. They want the evidence before they make the move. But this is the way of the old mind, the one that must see before it believes. The new mind believes before it sees, and it proves its faith through action. When you act in faith, you are telling life, I already possess this truth, and my steps reflect it. Acting in the new belief often requires stepping out of old habits and comfort zones. If you have believed yourself unworthy, you may have avoided opportunities, stayed silent when you had something to say, or settled for less than you desired. When you take on the new belief of worthiness, you must begin doing the opposite, speaking when your voice is needed, accepting invitations, applying for the role, or asking for what you want. Each time you do, you reinforce the new mental pattern. This is not pretending or forcing something false. It is practicing the truth until it becomes natural. The mind may still whisper the old doubts, but the body's actions begin to teach it otherwise. Over time, action has a way of quieting resistance. You begin to feel at home in the new role because you are living it, not just thinking about it. Small actions can be as powerful as great ones, provided they are consistent. If you are cultivating the belief that you are prosperous, you might start by treating yourself in small ways that reflect abundance. A fresh flower on your desk, a quality item instead of the cheapest option, or generosity toward another. If you are building the belief that you are capable, you might take on a manageable challenge each day until confidence becomes a habit. The outer world often responds to your actions faster than it responds to your thoughts. People notice the way you carry yourself, the choices you make, the confidence or openness in your manner. Opportunities often come not because the universe suddenly favors you, but because your actions place you in their path. The more you move in harmony with your new belief, the more life rearranges itself to match it. Acting in the new belief also strengthens resilience. Challenges may still appear, but instead of retreating into the old mindset, you meet them from the standpoint of your chosen truth. If your belief is that all things work for your good, you will look for the good even in the difficult, and your actions will reflect that expectation. This keeps you moving forward rather than returning to the patterns you left behind. The true test of a belief is not how beautifully it can be spoken, but how steadfastly it can be lived. Each choice, each step, each decision becomes a declaration. When you live as though your good is certain, the invisible begins to take form, and the life you once hoped for becomes the life you now walk in. Guarding the gates of the mind. Your mind is a sacred dwelling, and every thought, image, and word that enters becomes part of the atmosphere within. Just as a wise guardian watches the gates of a city to ensure only what is good and safe may enter, you must watch over the entrance to your own mind. What you allow in shapes the terrain of your inner world, and what grows there shapes the conditions of your life. Many live as though their minds are open fields, allowing any influence to wander in without question. Words of fear, images of despair, or voices of doubt are taken in and given a place to rest. Without realizing it, they become residents, and soon they speak from within, guiding decisions and coloring perceptions. Guarding the gates of the mind is the deliberate practice of choosing what you will allow to plant its seed in your thoughts. The mind is most impressionable when it is relaxed, such as during moments before sleep, upon waking, or when emotions are heightened. In these moments, the gates are open wide, and whatever passes through can sink deeply into the subconscious. If you feed your mind with news of trouble, conversations of gossip, or self-criticism in these hours, those impressions root themselves quickly. But if you fill these moments with words of faith, images of beauty, and thoughts of possibility, you plant seeds that bear a very different harvest. Guarding the gates is not about avoiding the world or pretending negativity does not exist. It is about selective engagement. You decide which voices will influence your belief and which will be left outside. Just as you would not invite a thief into your home to sit at your table, you must not welcome ideas that rob you of peace, hope, or vision. It also requires awareness of subtle influences. Sometimes it is not the loud, obvious messages that shape the mind most powerfully, but the repeated, casual ones. A steady stream of complaint, even if offered in jest, begins to condition you to expect disappointment. A diet of entertainment filled with struggle and defeat may quietly convince you that such is the natural order of life. To guard the gates, you must be discerning about not just what enters, but how often it is repeated. The practice extends to your own self-talk. Often, the most damaging intrusions come not from others, but from within. Old conditioning can rise like an uninvited guest, whispering failure into the corridors of your mind. In such moments, you must stand as the guardian, refusing entry to these thoughts and replacing them with words that align with your truth. This is the inner discipline that keeps the gates secure. Just as a gardener removes weeds before they spread, you must remove intruding thoughts before they take root. This does not mean wrestling with them in fear, it means calmly replacing them with better ones. The mind can hold only one dominant thought at a time, and by deliberately choosing the thought you will entertain, you close the gates to what does not serve you. Guarding the mind is an act of self-respect. It acknowledges that your mental space is valuable and that what occupies it will shape the destiny you walk toward. Over time, this guarding becomes second nature, and the mind grows into a place of beauty, peace, and strength, a stronghold where only that which uplifts and empowers may enter. Transmuting past conditioning into power. The past leaves its imprint on the mind like the grooves on a well-worn path. These grooves are formed from repeated experiences, beliefs, and reactions that have been rehearsed over time. Often, they are not of your choosing. They are the result of family patterns, cultural influences, or early circumstances that shaped how you see yourself and the world. While many allow these old patterns to dictate their present and future, there is a higher way to transmute past conditioning into a source of strength and wisdom. Transmutation is the art of transformation, taking something in its raw form and changing it into a higher expression. Just as a skilled alchemist turns base metals into gold, you have the ability to take the residue of past limitations and refine it into a force that fuels your growth. The past need not be an anchor. It can become a wind at your back if you understand how to redirect its energy. The first step in this transformation is awareness. Many live unconsciously in their conditioning, reacting automatically to life without questioning whether their responses reflect truth or old programming. You must begin to notice when your reactions are not truly your own, but are echoes of what you were taught or experienced long ago. This awareness creates a gap, a space where you can choose differently instead of repeating the same cycles. Once awareness is present, the energy of those old patterns can be redirected. A history of being told you are not enough can become the fuel for proving to yourself that you are more than capable. Past experiences of lack can awaken a deep desire for abundance, not from fear, but from a recognition of your true right to thrive. Pain from betrayal can evolve into the wisdom to discern truth and integrity in others. It is important to see past conditioning not as an enemy, but as raw material. In its unrefined state, it may appear limiting, but hidden within it is potential. Just as coal holds the possibility of becoming a diamond under pressure, your past holds the possibility of becoming the very thing that empowers you. This shift in perspective changes the way you meet your history. You stop resenting it and begin harvesting it. Emotions are a powerful part of transmutation. When you revisit old memories, you may feel the same emotions rise again: fear, anger, sadness. Instead of resisting them, allow them to surface and acknowledge them. Then, rather than letting them harden into bitterness, channel their energy into action, creativity, or purpose. The very intensity of these emotions is proof of the energy you have available to redirect. Words and mental imagery are tools in this work. Speak over your life in ways that reinterpret the meaning of your past. Instead of saying, "This happened to me and it broke me," you might affirm, "This happened and it forged me into strength." Visualize the energy of your old beliefs transforming into light, feeding the seeds of your new intentions. Over time, this mental practice rewires the association you have with your history. Living in this new state means you no longer fear your past being triggered. You carry it with the understanding that it has been purified. The same situations that once would have pulled you into reaction now call forth your clarity, confidence, and peace. You meet life not as the product of your past, but as the master of it, using everything you have experienced as a stepping stone to greater expression of who you truly are. The victory of a liberated mind. A liberated mind is the greatest triumph a soul can achieve, for it is freedom not granted by any external force, but claimed from within. It is the quiet, yet unshakable victory of one who has broken the unseen chains of fear, doubt, and limitation. When the mind is liberated, life unfolds in a way that reflects the boundless nature of the spirit, untouched by the conditions that once dictated thought and action. The journey to such freedom begins with recognizing the prison. Many live behind invisible bars, believing them to be the limits of reality. These bars are formed from beliefs absorbed without question, beliefs about what is possible, what is worthy, and what is normal. To the unawakened, these mental walls feel solid and immovable, but to the awakened, they are recognized as illusions, dissolved the moment they are exposed to truth. The victory of a liberated mind is not marked by the absence of challenges, but by the presence of mastery over thought in the midst of them. Life's waves may still rise, but they no longer throw you into panic or despair. Instead, you meet them with the calm of one who knows the deeper law at work, that your inner state shapes the outer conditions, and that no circumstance can bind a mind that refuses to be enslaved. Liberation comes through the consistent discipline of choosing your thoughts with precision. No longer do you allow fear to occupy the throne of your mind. No longer do you entertain the lies of inadequacy or the whispers of defeat. Instead, you enthrone ideas of power, beauty, faith, and abundance, knowing that these will govern the landscape of your experience. This is not blind optimism, it is the conscious selection of the seeds you wish to grow. A liberated mind is a creative force. It does not wait for permission to imagine or to act. It sees opportunity in the smallest crack of possibility and expands it into reality. Such a mind has reclaimed its divine right to direct attention, and in doing so, it directs life itself. It is no longer a servant to habit or the echo of old voices. It has become the author, writing each chapter with intention. One of the signs of this victory is peace that does not depend on the world's agreement. Others may doubt, criticize, or resist the changes you embody, but their opinions lose the power to sway you. You understand that truth is not decided by consensus, and so you walk your path without the need for approval. This quiet certainty is one of the most unshakable strengths a human being can carry. In the victory of a liberated mind, love flows freely. You no longer fear giving or receiving it, for the walls of self-protection built from old wounds have fallen. You recognize that love is not weakness, but the highest strength, and it can only be expressed fully by one who is inwardly free. Gratitude becomes your natural state, for every day is received as a canvas on which you may paint without restriction. This victory is not something you achieve once and then forget. It is a living state, renewed in every moment you choose truth over illusion, power over fear, and faith over limitation. It is the steady unfolding of your highest self, walking in a world that no longer commands your mind but is shaped by it. The reclamation of your mind from hidden paradigms is the quiet revolution that changes everything without the need for struggle. Each step, from unmasking inherited patterns to guarding the gates of your thoughts, builds upon the last until you find yourself standing in the unshakable victory of true mental freedom. You are no longer the echo of old voices or the shadow of past conditioning. You are the deliberate creator of your inner world and thus the architect of your outer one. When the mind is liberated, it does not merely adapt to life's circumstances, it transforms them. Fear loses its grip, lack dissolves into abundance, and every limitation becomes raw material for growth. This is not a gift granted by fortune, society, or fate. It is a birthright claimed through awareness, discipline, and the refusal to think thoughts unworthy of your spirit. Your victory is not loud or boastful. It is seen in the serenity of your presence, the power of your choices, and the clarity of your vision. It is felt in the unbroken peace that no storm can touch, in the creative flow that no obstacle can dam. And as you continue to walk in this freedom, your very existence becomes a living testament. The mind, once reclaimed, becomes the most powerful force for transformation in the world.